Video lowdown.
Hey folks, today's video lowdown involves stepping back in time and hopefully resurrecting some of the craziest animals that walk this earth. Yes, that's right, it's de-extinction time. De-extinction coming to a zoo near you. De-extinction is also known as resurrection biology. It's a controversial scientific program whereby scientists may be able to resurrect long-vanished species either by manipulating pieces of their DNA or by debreeding tame populations into a close approximation of their wild relatives. Whenever an argument about de-extinction takes place, you're almost certain to hear about one of the following animals that went extinct recently enough to make their reintroduction a distinct possibility. When we look at modern-day domestic cattle, we likely never realize that we are benefiting from an extinct species. While buffalo, bison, and yak hold on and in some cases thrive in wild populations, the auroch or wild cow is now extinct. Once ranging across Eurasia, numerous individuals were domesticated and selectively bred into different strains of cattle. Hunting and land use change left no individuals remaining in the wild. Coupled with the changes of domestication, the auroch was lost. As the domestic subspecies, common cattle thrive worldwide. An approach based on backcrossing and selective breeding for ancestral traits is proposed as the way to restore the species. Release of aurochs into Europe's forest would increase wildlife habitat and make for a great new trophy head to hang on your wall. Even Adolf Hitler tried to bring them back. Yummy. Who wants some Nazi steak? The situation of the pyrenean ibex in the Mediterranean mountains was one of the most senseless extinctions, considering it occurred in the year 2001. However, the recentness collided with the development of cloning technology, allowing this species to become living proof that extinct species can be resurrected through genetic restoration procedures. In 2003, a live pyrenean ibex was born and lived briefly before dying of lung failure, an unfortunate defect that could likely be avoided in future breeding. Although this was a setback, it's amazing that the animal was recreated and only one major physiological problem occurred. With just a few refinements and restoration of project funding, the wild relative of Dolly the sheep could become the first recreated mammal. There are challenges with reintroducing species thanks to the need to introduce culture, learn behavior, and social structures. Of course, there is always the chance something could go wrong and we end up with an ibex human mutant. Oh, the humanity. The woolly rhino is another species of Pleistocene megafauna that was depicted in prehistoric cave art, probably by Banksy's Neanderthal cousin. Like the woolly mammoth, there is considerable debate about precisely when the woolly rhino went extinct, but it is thought to be around the end of the last ice age, roughly 10,000 years ago. A few woolly rhino carcasses have been recovered from the permafrost in Siberia, and one highly intact one was pulled from a tar pit in Starunia, Poland. Some DNA analysis have been done, and a study published in Molecular Phylogenetics and Evolution concluded that the woolly rhino's nearest living relative is the Sumatran rhino. Unfortunately, that species is barely hanging on itself and is listed as critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So it looks like bringing back the rhino may be a little bit more difficult than originally thought. Next up is another woolly dude, and that's the woolly mammoth. Unlike more recent extinctions, the woolly mammoth remains a mystery. Suitable habitats exist in Siberian regions where mammoth bodies are still being found preserved in the permafrost. The conditions that preserve the bodies have also preserved the sequences of this giant mammal rather effectively, giving scientists the opportunity to clone mammoths using their closest living relative, the Asian elephant. It is suspected that overhunting may have wiped out woolly mammoth rather than simple environmental change. The muskox possesses a similar woolly coat and exists very well in Arctic tundra to this day. As a smaller animal with faster reproductive rates, they were likely better able to withstand hunting pressures. I guess there was just too many Fred Flintstones around back in the day. The moa, or Dinormus robustus, was a giant bird reaching a height of 13 feet. Native to New Zealand, it dwarfed modern-day ostriches and weighed in at a whopping 510 pounds. By the year 1400, pressures from overhunting by the Maori and habitat loss to farmland, the moa was lost to extinction. Moa have been a good candidate for rebirth because they had a lot of large bones for scientists to work with. According to scientists, if we can get these genes out of mammoth femurs that are 20,000 years old, we can get DNA out of anything that died in the last 1,000 years. Unfortunately, bones don't yield as many formerly living cells per square inch as soft tissues, since much of their composition is mineral, although they still have potential as a source for DNA. In the case of the moa, in addition to thousands of bones, scientists have also found preserved soft tissue in the form of skin muscle and feathers, thanks to desiccation in New Zealand's semi-arid Otago Central region. Still, the moa's giant size might make it difficult for a surrogate to lay a large enough egg. In other words, it's going to take a big-ass chicken to lay a 10-pound egg. The quagga, or horse tiger, was an equine mix of horse and zebra characteristics native to South Africa. The quagga went extinct following overhunting in the late 1800s. The brown color with limited frontal stripes suggests it was either the ancestor of the fully striped zebra or a more recently developed descendant that was in close process of losing its stripes and returning to a horse-like form. Due to the close relationship of this wild horse subspecies to the plain zebra, efforts have been made to re-evolve them through selective breeding. Incredibly, the work has been met with a measure of success, and some scientists believe the quagga is already partially restored. Several animals with intermediated coloration have been released into parks. I just hope for the quagga's sake they're not the same parks that the saber-toothed tigers are being released into. And another big daddy to add to the list is the mastodon. Similar to its cousin, the woolly mammoth, mastodons are extinct species related to elephants that lived in North and Central America. They went extinct around 12,000 years ago, and scientists aren't exactly sure how it happened. It may have been a result of human hunting or climate change or habitat loss, or perhaps a combination of all three. Either way, the mastodon is certainly a candidate for the de-extinction, but even if they don't bring the mastodon back, at least we still have that cool sludge metal band. The thylacine, otherwise known as the Tasmanian tiger, was officially declared extinct in 1986, although it had already been 50 years since the last sighting in the wild. Once an abundant part of Tasmania's natural wildlife, the Tasmanian tiger became so much of a problem for sheep farmers in the 1880s that the Tasmanian government offered to pay £1 for every Tasmanian tiger killed. Unsurprisingly, it was hunted to near extinction. The last known thylacine died in 1936. However, the thylacine may have been dead, but it wasn't lost. In 1918, the Museum of Victoria in Melbourne had preserved several dead thylacines in tubs of alcohol. With just a few remaining tissue samples from nearly a century ago, researchers from the University of Melbourne began picking apart the creature's DNA. By 2008, they had patched together enough of the thylacine's genome to insert it into a mouse embryo, and the mouse began displaying traits from an animal that hadn't walked the earth for 80 years. Which makes me think that if a half mouse, half thylacine is running around, somebody's going to have to invent a better mousetrap. Next, we have another flightless bird and the penguin of the northern hemisphere, also known as the great auk. The great auk was a flightless, goose-sized bird that dove into the North Atlantic to feed on fish and other prey. When it waddled onto the shores of rocky islands to breed, it was helpless against the sealers who killed the great auk for food. The last pair ever recorded lived on the island of Eldey near Iceland. On June 3, 1844, sailors clubbed them to death, and the great auk has never been seen alive since. It's kind of like the dodo bird. When you can't fly and you taste good, your days are pretty much numbered. And last but not least, my favorite crazy cat, the saber-toothed tiger. Of all the animals on the list, Smilodon, aka the saber-toothed tiger, may be the longest shot for the de-extinction. On the plus side, the saber-toothed tiger certainly is the sexiest candidate of them all. Can you imagine the bidding war among zoos and nature preserves for the honor and profit of hosting a roaring, pouncing, canine-wielding family of Smilodons? On the minus side, it's not at all clear if sufficient Smilodon DNA can be recovered. to make the de-extinction a technical possibility, and it's not as if the saber-toothed tiger has any specially close living relatives. There's also the matter of what a successful reproduction of a saber-toothed tiger would mean for the defenseless prey animals of the Serengeti, not to mention the already endangered big cats in which Smilodon would be in direct competition with. Oh, I can just see it now. Coming to a petting zoo near you, Smilodon rides. So that's it, folks. My list of best candidates for the de-extinction. What extinct animal would you like to bring back? Leave it in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe for more entertaining and informative content. Bye for now.